let your kids watch it.
What is going up, good people? I stopped into one of the three that used to be four local Gamestops yesterday, and as you'll see in the inset video here, there was a whole lot of new to them signage and fixture pieces and whatnot. And I asked the associate at the front if they were doing like a remodel or something, and she told me no. The one in the mall, which was another location that's probably about a good mile and a half away, had closed. Now, the one in the mall I had long considered to be the saddest GameStop in America, because you could go in there. First of all, it was about the size of my closet. And secondly, you go in there on any given day and they just had very few games, and even their little knick-knack fixtures that they had set out with shirts and hoodies and everything was getting really threadbare. And I didn't know in advance that they were doing it, but I wasn't surprised. I know that GameStop has announced, I think, the closure of 150 more stores this year. Now, I don't know if this is true, and to be fair, the associate told me that she didn't know this to be a fact, but she did tell me her understanding was that GameStop was planning on closing a lot of, if not most of, mall location GameStops. Now, she didn't know if that was in the country, but certainly in the state. And for our state, that certainly wouldn't be too many locations. As a matter of fact, I'm not entirely certain that this might not have been the last one. But anyway, my point being, within the last 2 years, we've gone from having 4 locations down to 2 locations. The second location, the one I went into yesterday, was one I did on a prior video. Not necessarily the previous, but one of the last 3 or 4 videos I did, where it was a little short just showing how absolutely decimated the shelf stock was at GameStop. You go in there, and for a game that, or for a store that, you know, is predicated on the business of selling games, they had very few to pick from, which is not a surprise given that, you know, everything's streaming these days or digital downloads. But still, everybody loves to hate on GameStop, and I'm certainly not a fan of all of their business practices, but I, at this point, would be honestly surprised if GameStop was still around in 5 years. I can't imagine what sort of pivot they could make that would save the business. I know they've been going through executives left and right. It's just they hire them on, and, you know, they get paid and they jump out, and they've just been closing store after store after store after store. So I don't know. As much as people like to hate on them, you know, I have a lot of good memories at GameStop too. You know, I've taken my oldest son to midnight releases at that particular location. I remember when I first moved to the area and began working, you know, in this area, because unfortunately where I came from, jobs weren't there, so I had to move to a more I guess a bigger, I can't talk y'all this morning. I was sick all day yesterday. My point being, I had to move to the big city to get a job, you know. And I used to love going by that GameStop. It actually used to be quite lively. You know, back in the day, they would have televisions and game consoles set up there for you to try. They had Guitar Hero, and like a lot of us would have fun going up to the very front of the store and talking smack and playing games. And I remember they used to have a couple of discount bins when this was right at the cusp of when they were clearing out their retro games. And this was like late 90s, early 2000s, but I remember picking up Contra there and Metroid and quite a few. And even at the time, I was, you know, paying, you know, $25-$30 for some of these titles. But that was, you know, it was great that you could still walk in and pick up a lot of those great 16 and 8-bit generation games, because at that point, honestly, we were only about 10 to 15 years removed from that generation. And there was one time I went in and I remembered it. I don't know why it stuck out, but I was thumbing through some old PS3 games, and they had one with a zebra on it, and I looked on the back, and it just looked like a photography game, and it was called Africa. And I thought, that just sounds stupid, and I could have picked it up for dirt, and I didn't. Hindsight's 2020, right? But anyway, have any of the GameStops in your locations been closing down or kind of looking a little bit threadbare lately? If so, you know, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And as always, pick your battles, because not every hill's worth dying on. And my bills need paying. As much as I hate going to work, that's a battle I'm picking. So take it easy, y'all.
Remember the last time you used a public restroom?